Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, the number one source for news, analysis, and discussion on the Detroit Red Wings, the NHL, and all things hockey. Here are your hosts, Ryan Hanna, Brad Crisco, and Evan Lopsinger.
So it's 6:30 local here, and Max, where you are in California, it's about 3:30. And this is the second consecutive episode where we have one of our good friends of the Winged Wheel Podcast in California recording during daytime hours. And that's not a coincidence. We are actually all collectively jealous of the fact that you're in California, and we figured you don't get to have fun without us. So you actually just sit in a hotel room staring at your laptop to record a hockey podcast.
That's true. Manhattan Beach is close by. I'm deciding, am I going to go, try to walk the beach a little bit? Nope. Back to the content mines yet again.
Oh, brother, you're talking about the Red Wings fourth line today. That's what you're doing. You can go out when the sun goes down. Folks, a remote episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast because this is the return of Max Bultman of the Athletic Detroit for a Good in the Room episode. Folks were wondering if these have stopped. Nope, we just did September's in early September, and October's came late in October, but we got it in just under the wire. Max, welcome back to the show.
Glad to be back.
And on that note, the Red Wings have won again against the St. Louis Blues, and we have a whole 10 games of Red Wings hockey to catch up on with Max and to see where things are at, as well as some updates about the team. So without further ado, welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey, the world of the NHL, and lots more. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
I'm Max Bultman.
And I'm Evan.
This episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast is presented by Greenlight Lending. Red lights are meant for lighting the lamp at the rink, not your home ownership goals. Head to gogreenlightlending.com today for creative mortgage solutions with flexible closing cost options. Licensed only in Michigan, NMLS 2676683, and equal housing opportunity lender. On this episode of the show, we are going to be discussing actually some news about the Red Wings as Michael Brandsegg-Nygard was sent down to the AHL's Grand Rapids Griffins and what's next for him if we're going to see him again this season, how this relates to Danielson, Mazur, Sandin-Pellikka, Finnie, and others. We're going to be talking about the Red Wings game where Detroit finished their home and home against St. Louis and did so much more decisively this time around, a second consecutive win. And then we're going to be jumping into the Good in the Room segment as Max talks to us about his thoughts about the Red Wings season so far, players like Larkin and DeBrincat standing out, what to make of Casper and Kane and Raymond and others, and then other Red Wings and NHL notes before we jump into overtime. Very quickly, Winged Wheel Podcast Night at the LCA, Saturday, November 15th. Get your tickets, wingedwheelpodcast.com/Red Wings. Your tickets aren't only access to the Red Wings game, of course, at a discounted rate. They also get you access to the Winged Wheel Podcast live recording of the show at Little Caesars Arena, featuring Ken Daniels, Rob Ray, us, the hosts, less importantly, other special guests. You also get a special Detroit Red Wings and Winged Wheel Podcast co-branded Centennial-themed blanket. Other merch giveaways, prizes will be available, all of that and lots more, and every ticket purchased represents a donation to the Jamie Daniels Foundation. So again, wingedwheelpodcast.com/Red Wings. MBN sent down to the AHL after 9 games, which is the most that he can play without burning up a year of his ELC, and we'll chat about whether that's actually the strategy here, but he is sent down to Grand Rapids after a first 9 games that were a different tone than what the preseason was, but not entirely a crazy bad or crazy good 9 games. We'll start with you, Max. What do you make of the Red Wings sending him down? Were you surprised, and what do you think's next?
Not surprised based on, he played under 7 minutes in his last game. It seemed over the last 3 or 4 that it might trend towards something like this, but I agree with you. I don't think he was bad. And I think after 3 or 4 or 5 games even, I was thinking, he looks like he belongs. And then you kind of start to see maybe it's a pace question, especially, the other guys are on the score sheet a little bit more than he's been so far. And, there's all kinds of variables to that. But he's also the youngest of them. I know they're technically all 20, but Brandsegg-Nygard is the one who was a draft class later. So in the arc of his career, like he was, and that's why he's slide eligible and the others are not as well. He was the one that I think was the most surprising to me to make the team from, well, I guess Finnie's the most surprising based on where everything would have been going into camp, but based on where it was maybe halfway through the preseason, Finnie was the one I projected onto the roster and thought, maybe Sandin-Pellikka can make a push. Brandsegg-Nygard just wouldn't stop scoring at that point, and so he makes a team. But he always seemed like a guy who would benefit from some time in Grand Rapids, and he's going to get that. Now, I'm sure it's disappointing, and I think maybe for fans who look at the Red Wings lineup and go like, well, it's not like the fourth line, although we're going to talk about some good work that the fourth line did last night, later on today, I'm sure. It's not like the fourth line's been, amazing and that there's like, oh, there's just no spot for a young guy. But I think it's really more about what's better for him and the role he's going to play. He could play power play 2. We can play third line minutes in Detroit. He could play first line minutes in power play 1 in Grand Rapids. Ultimately, I can completely understand why you'd prefer the Grand Rapids route there.
The way I see this is not that the Red Wings had a concrete plan of, we're going to have him only for 9 games and then send him down because we don't want to burn the ELC year. And, I don't think they said concretely that we're going to keep him up for all 82. It was just, if we're going to send him now, this gives us the most flexibility. And for the reasons you pointed out, Max, the stint in the AHL, and we talked about this last episode as well, can do him a lot of good. So if you're going to do it at any point, now's the time. I was kind of debating the same questions that you mentioned of there's not really other guys who are pushing him out of the lineup. So is this about the Red Wings lineup? And I think it's very obvious that the answer is no. He wasn't doing a ton, if you're talking about under 7 minutes in the final game that he played before being sent down, you can't say that the Red Wings lineup is carrying a big net negative now without him. Although I do think they're losing something in terms of the physicality and the energy and things, and they'll have to make up for that. But yeah, at the end of the day, the calculus has to be about the player, and there's some strategy to it, again, because of the amount of games he played and when you can slide a year of the entry-level contract and when you can't. I just don't think the story is fully written on him yet, so I wouldn't go so far as to say that.
No, I mean, and to your point, I think he was leading the team in hits at the time he's sent down. That's something that we've all talked about. The Red Wings need more of a heaviness factor. And I think with the shot, like, you could have made a case. It's like, hey, like, let this guy keep trying to figure it out and see if that comes. But I think especially once you see his arrow not trending up as steeply and then the ice time's going down, you're saying, okay, like, the coaching staff is clearly like starting to see whether it's him pressing or whether it's just him kind of a step behind. At that point, you go let the kid work stuff out, and I'm sure he will. Like, I think what he did in the preseason portends really good things for him in the American Hockey League, and I bet you we see him again this year. I bet you we see him again before like February.
Yeah, the 9-game thing, I think you phrased it right. It's just flexibility. If they choose to slide it, they can. If they choose not to, they can. I'm a believer in the burn it for the most part at this point. We've seen how that's hurting us with Edvinsson right now. If he was due up for a contract earlier, there might be an extension. It might be cheaper than it comes in at, but I don't think it's a huge deal either way for him because he's not a guy realistically that's going to command $10 million a year. I think this is genuinely just a development move. And I think it's a right move because, again, he hit everything that moved. We saw, especially in preseason, the flashes of the upside that he has. He, especially as like the games went on and things, the rest of the league, the rest of the vets in the NHL who have been playing for years got up to their normal speed. It just felt like every game that passed, Brandsegg-Nygard's pace got exposed more, and you could see the struggles, and you could just see his brain was telling him to do the right things. He just couldn't do them quick enough, and his foot speed wasn't quick enough to get enough time and space to make those decisions a half a second slower. So it was kind of like one problem compounds the other, where if he could get himself more space, he'd have that extra half a second to make a decision, but he couldn't get more space, and he's not used to NHL pace, so he just couldn't make the decision quick enough. And you could see, like I said, it just was compounding as everything got faster, and he was really struggling to make things happen out there.
So based on what we saw so far, I mean, I'm asking you to predict the future here, but do you think we see him back up in the NHL? And to make it easier, I'll say that I do get the feeling that based on what we saw, unless things continue to be a little bit of a slog, literally for MBN down the AHL, I have to imagine that the Red Wings will have more need of him at the NHL level. Like he can contribute to the game right now. And if there is any kind of meaningful difference in his foot speed or decision-making to any kind of degree, it doesn't have to be like completely fixed overnight. I just feel like the Red Wings would be better off for it at some point down the road. I'm not guaranteeing it, but that's just the kind of, reading the tea leaves, that's where I would land if you made me bet on it.
I agree. I mean, and we've seen, Soderblom, he made that kind of miraculous push. He ends up going to Grand Rapids and he stayed down there. So sometimes it goes that way too, even independent of any contract considerations. But I just look at him and I just think there's a lot of boxes that he checks that this team is still going to be looking for come February, come March, certainly come April. And that I think that there's a path back there, right? So, he's going to be competing with other guys for that call up, right? Like I think we'll see Nate Danielson in Detroit before we see Michael Brandsegg-Nygard back in Detroit. But would it shock me to see both of them in the lineup regularly come March? No, not one bit, especially if he fares well down there.
Yeah, that was the big takeaway for me on who will come up next. Nate Danielson had a goal in the shootout winner last night in Grand Rapids. He's looked good. Unfortunate for Carter Mazur, he's now hurt again. But, there's competition brewing down in Grand Rapids. So it's no guarantee that MBN will be the next call-up. But I think, he goes down to Grand Rapids, works on his game, works on pace. You for sure could see him up again this year.
All right, I'm sure we're going to be talking about that plenty and more on Danielson and Mazur later. But for now, let's talk about the Red Wings game where Detroit went into St. Louis. And obviously after the dramatic comeback win 6-4 in Detroit, where they were down 4-0, all eyes were on the Red Wings to see, one, how are they going to play on the road, which hasn't been friendly to them this year, and two, against a St. Louis team that'd be motivated to kind of get their payback. And I got to say, this was one of the most boring in the best way Red Wings games this season, where they ended up with a 5-2 win and a much, much better effort top to bottom, including the bottom. The depth showed up for Detroit this game, I felt.
The first place you got to point to this is the week of practice that they've had. So both Sunday and Monday, virtually the entire practice is devoted to just like a couple of key things. And it's all around how you defend the track when the opposing team is on the rush. Who's supposed to step to the guy at the line, who checks the guy who's kind of for the drop off. How do you make sure that the middle is still covered? All things that have burned the Red Wings, certainly in the Montreal game, in the Islander game. They basically dedicated 2 entire days to wiping that out of their game. And to their credit, they did. It's not like they put up a shutout. It's not like there were 0 mistakes, but there were very few mistakes on that, if any. And so I think that's like the first place you look to that is that is a actionable result of all the practice time that they spent. I do think it's interesting. This is the second time this year we've seen a Red Wings home and home with the same team. They sweep them both. They got 4 more of these this year. I've never seen this many of this situation in an NHL season. They're going to do it with Boston. They're going to do it with Pittsburgh. They're going to do it with Washington. They're going to do it with Colorado. I'm not saying they're going to win all 8 of those games. It's very interesting to see. Typically, you would chalk that up as a guaranteed split one way or the other, right? And so far, they've been able to sweep both of those.
And this one, a lot more convincingly than Toronto. Toronto's was just funny. Toronto was just theft, what they went into that city and did that day. So, yeah, I'm also just from a scheduling standpoint, I think I kind of like it. It's a holdover from the COVID, those little mini series days. And I have to imagine that the NHL is going to be leaning on this more too now with having to cram in the Olympics, the World Cup, and 2 more games, every other year. That's the kind of thing where they're going to have to be more efficient with their scheduling. So Detroit wins 5-2. The game started terribly. Braden Schenn scored within, 47 seconds. And they went down. And you're like, okay, so one of the keys to the game was starting on time. And as is tradition, they did not. Braden Schenn then fought Travis Hamonic, who came in the lineup for JBD, which I thought was an interesting move. I wasn't a terribly big fan of that based on what we've seen so far. But, he came in. Maybe the Red Wings wanted some energy there, and that's what they got with that scrap with Hamonic too. And then after that, it was, the Red Wings pretty much the whole way through. Ben Sherratt, his shot deflects in with Appleton and DeBrincat picking up the assist. DeBrincat continues goal scoring, opened up the hopeful floodgates last game and then continued today on a power play goal where Mo Seider walked the line and made a really nice play, and DeBrincat put it in on the power play on a redirect. And then Larkin on a really nice set play from the face-off that Larkin won back to Raymond to Edvinsson, quick pass to Larkin, and that was Larkin just firing home perfectly his 7th goal of the season. And then Elmer Soderblom bangs in what was a really nice play below the goal line from Michael Rasmussen, and JVR picks up the secondary assist, and that was 4-1 for Detroit. And I think let's stop there and talk about the way Soderblom and Rasmussen and the Red Wings depth, the way they performed that game. And a sense that we haven't really seen all season. You know, they went back to 12 forwards, so Rasmussen back in the lineup, and they kind of seized an opportunity there.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think that goal was a blueprint for what you want to see out of Michael Rasmussen, right? We know he's not going to be the guy who's scoring all these breakaway rush goals. The way he's going to create offense is by doing exactly what he did, using his body to shield the puck and making a good play to the slot. Because he shielded the puck so well from that defender, that second defender of the net made a dumb decision and left Soderblom alone to go try and help and free that puck up. Rasmussen made him pay. Soderblom is left all alone. He obviously scores the goal. But to me, Rasmussen makes the play by the way that he shielded the puck from the defender with his body. And so that's exactly what you want to see from Michael Rasmussen. And for all the valid criticism of like, hey, he doesn't make enough use of his size on, let's say, finishing checks. Although he is typically one of the hits leaders for the Red Wings. It's just you hear 6'6" and you think it's going to be more menacing than that, right? And so I think there's some valid criticism to it. This is where he can do it without having to be a killer, right? You can make very good use of size in the NHL without it having to be, hits. And this is a perfect example.
St. Louis did bring it to 4-2 when Kyrou scored, and then Larkin on the empty net from Raymond gets his 8th goal of the season, his 16th point, which we're going to talk more about in a bit, and Detroit wins 5-2. Gibson makes 18 saves in the second consecutive win against St. Louis. He didn't have to be excellent. He just had to be decent, and that's what he showed up for the Red Wings. And Detroit picks up their 7th win in their first 10 games of the season. And as Ken noted on the broadcast, that was the first time since 2010 where the Red Wings were able to pull that off in their first 10 games of the season. So despite how low the lows got there for a quick second, the Red Wings are off to about as hot of a start that you could have reasonably asked for if you're a Red Wings fan.
This is uncharted territory for the podcast. We don't know what to do. We don't know what to say anymore.
The script runs out here, yeah.
We've seen stretches like this before over the course of the history of this podcast. And 99% of the time, it's us looking at something on the team and going, that is extremely unsustainable. When is the cliff going to hit? Except the Red Wings have one of the lowest PDOs in the league right now. So they're actually underperforming what their PDO says they should be. Now, their 5-on-5 numbers aren't glowing, but their special teams are still in the positives. It's weird, though, because this is as close as they have felt to being sustainable at any of the stretches over the history of this podcast where they've been good. The 7-game win streaks last year were awesome, but I think everybody watching them knew that was the new coach bump. That was not going to be something that is going to happen regularly. Because I don't think the Red Wings goaltending has been particularly good this year. I don't think they've been horrific, but they've stolen 1, maybe 2 games. There's several key players on this team who are not performing up to the standard we think they're going to perform up to. Yes, Emmitt Finney's a huge surprise, and Sandin-Pellikka has been good, but it's not like these are the guys that just came in, brought the youthful enthusiasm, and are like, okay, now we have all these rookies. They're all going to be nominated for the Calder. You can't stop this team. So it's weird. As much as there's been a lot of things going right for Detroit, a lot hasn't, and yet they're still 7-3. And I don't say that as a point of concern because every team has things go wrong. Like you look around all the top teams in the league, there's going to be a Marco Kasper who's only got, 1 or 2 points or something like that. So I feel like the Red Wings might not be in a terrible position because if Larkin regresses or Seider has a few off games, well, maybe that's when Edvinsson bounces back. Maybe that's when Kasper bounces back and everything just kind of continues to level out over the season.
Here's where I agree with the overall thrust of your point actually completely. Here's where I'd be careful on the PDO portion of it. On 2 fronts. One of them I did not even expect to be the case. One, I think that the PDO calculator is wrong because it says 97.1 is the PDO, but it's got the save percentage at 882 and the shooting percentage at 12.7. I am by no means a math major, but that is 100.8. That is not 97.1. So I don't know what's going on with that. That is not their PDO.
The math says they are what we thought they were.
Exactly. The other half of that is that the shooting percentage is actually way higher than league average. Like 12.7 is a shooting percentage that you look at as a team, not as an individual player, but as a team, and you go, that's not going to sustain. Now, the flip side is the save percentage, right? Except for the save percentage is not because they've gotten particularly bad goaltending. A few moments here and there, it's been an earned low save percentage by the quality of chances they've given up. So I almost am throwing the PDO stuff out the window for all kinds of reasons, whether or not the calculation on Hockey Reference is correct, which it's not. I don't know what happened there. Usually those things are just spreadsheet things. It's clockwork. That's a weird thing to me. But I agree with the bulk of what you said, because the fact that they've been this good while Marco Kasper has 1 point, while Alex DeBrincat has 2 goals, right? While Lucas Raymond has not looked even really close to himself, but he's still humming along at a point per game pace. Like without Patrick Kane, their defense, like I think Moritz Seider started the year really good. He has an uncharacteristically off night last night. Simon Edvinsson has had a couple of those early this year. Like they found a way to do this without having it be their like A game in an unsustainable way. So on the overall thrust, I do completely agree. That's weirdly like maybe the most encouraging thing about the Red Wings is that you feel like their best is still untapped.
They still do give us our creature comforts of goal within the first minute and, a couple really terrible games after showing that they can play extremely well. So we know it's not like this completely foreign departure from the Red Wings we know and love. So the gradual steps are almost more promising that way. And I mean, you can look at guys like DeBrincat and how snake-bitten he was to start and how much of the goals below expected were just from that player alone. And it's a small sample size, but you've seen enough where the difference in how they play, and I like what you pointed out, Max, about the way that they've practiced and what they've been focusing on. They're starting to weed out the bad habits of I almost want to categorize it all as how they react when things go wrong, because that's when things start to come up that way. I mean, even after the St. Louis game, we didn't talk about enough last episode, is McLellan, was happy that they won on the first leg of the home and home, but he was riled up, and that next practice was intense. Like they shouldn't have gone down 4-0 that game, and it's interesting to hear what they've been working on in those practices. Like it's been, McLellan has really kind of taken a keen eye as to those big glaring red flags early.
And it was not they were not quiet practices. Like this is more like barking kind of practices. Like this was not going to be something they were going to be able to in one ear out the other. They were going to do this right one way or another. And to their credit, they did. But it was, again, like I wrote this the other day, like it's encouraging how well they've responded to being challenged by their coach. It's discouraging that we're talking about 2 to 3 times being challenged by their coach and it's not even Halloween. I don't know what to make of all that, right? Because I don't think you can have that 30% of the time through a season and everyone still be like cool. But on the other hand, really encouraging resilience. One of our questions about the Red Wings coming in was, are they mentally tough enough? So far, they look pretty mentally tough. They can take, getting really called out by their coach, and they can come back from down 4-0 after already being in a 2-game losing streak. Like, that's great. But man, do not put yourself in this position too often.
What does it say that you just said 30% of the time you can't be that way sustainably? And I thought, ooh, only 30%. What a great season that's going to be. So the Red Wings upcoming, they have, a lot of time left on the road, as evidenced by Max in California right now. On Thursday, they have the LA Kings 10:30 Eastern, and on Friday, they have the Anaheim Ducks 10 p.m. Eastern. And then we're going to be back with you on Sunday. We're going to be recording and posting before Sunday's game, which is the San Jose Sharks at 8 p.m. Eastern. And then their last game of the road trip is Vegas, 10 p.m. Eastern. So, obviously, how many points are you looking for the Red Wings? You're looking for all of them. Off to a hot start with the St. Louis win, and that's good. And you have a mix of teams there in terms of the quality of the teams. Like you have games that should be, winnable. You have a team maybe at your caliber thereabouts, and then you have, what could be a juggernaut. But at the end of the day, it's going to be a tough task as the road trip goes on. And we said last episode that this is going to be a really good indicator for how the Red Wings handle the grind of the season and when things aren't going to go their way just because it's stacked against them. So anything that you're kind of keeping your eye on, macro view or individual player wise for what to look for the rest of the road trip?
A few things. The Seider-Edvinsson pair being reunited is very interesting to me. That was one of the first things McLellan changed. I mean, that was a pair that was working under Derek Lalonde, and he comes in and he splits them up, and the logic made sense. Like, you kind of want to have one of them on the ice at all times. So to see them reunited is very interesting. That's something I meant to ask McLellan about today, but just got sidetracked by other things and anyway, distracted or whatever, and need to follow up with him about, because that's very interesting to see. I thought Marco Kasper had an improved game in St. Louis, and it's funny, like, you see a play, and this was the case with DeBrincat when he was in his drought too. You see a player who's like really giving it full all, and then the bounces don't go, and you're like, oh, that's not how that's supposed to work. But it's almost like you have to earn your bounce for a while, and I think it's coming for him, because I thought that was maybe his best game of the year so far. In St. Louis, he gets to the net, the puck kind of goes off him, but slides out. I actually don't even know for sure if they would have counted it. It's always tough to tell when it goes off a skate, but he's another guy who's very central here, right? I mean, at training camp, that was their best line, I thought, was DeBrincat, Kasper, and Kane, and now Kane's out, so maybe that's part of it. But I also just haven't thought Kasper's looked quite right. Even Lucas Raymond, since the injury, I don't know if he's looked quite himself, and I personally chalk that up entirely to the injury and think he's probably gutting through it for them just because they don't have Kane and they really need him. But can also make a case, and McLellan kind of did today, that, well, if you're healthy enough to be out there, you're healthy enough to have kind of your standards be your standards. So I'm interested in all of those things.
Thinking specifically about Edvinsson and Seider, and it's funny, kind of the spark for that was kind of really poor play elsewhere on defense outside of Mo Seider and whatever he was doing on the ice, and Ben Sherratt, who I think deserves a lot more credit this year than he typically gets. Edvinsson's just, it's a small sample, but I really love what I've seen from that pair. All this is doing is, I think, helping the Red Wings defensive force, at least in one regard. It's not top to bottom a force to be reckoned with, to say the least, but that top pair is the eye test and the analytics have shown really, really good results in a limited sample, unsurprisingly. Although I do, it's making that contract more expensive, as Brad mentioned at the top. There's a couple of games there where you're like, oh man, Edvinsson with a rough start to the season, but hey, maybe the next contract's going to be cheaper. I think by the end of the year, we'll be laughing at that as more of a little blip than anything else.
Well, here's the thing. It's all like, they don't need it to be that cheap. They have so much cap space. They have so many good contracts, long contracts right now, that like they can overpay on one or two of them if they have to. And B, who even knows what an overpay is anymore? 5 years ago, no player with the $10 million salary had ever won the Stanley Cup. And that has changed with Eichel and Bobrovsky, obviously. But Logan Cooley signs an 8-year, $10 million deal this morning. And my first reaction is, wow, what a steal for Utah. So it's like everything's out the window at this point.
I mean, talking about a steal of contracts, let's just pivot over to Hutch and the Lions. I was happy to see that one come in.
Yeah, I mean, and that one's somehow at those premium positions, you pretty much assume that whoever signs next is resetting the market and signing the highest deal ever. He came in under Micah Parsons, so I guess you take that as a win.
So that's the Red Wings' upcoming road trip and our schedule there. We're going to be covering more, obviously, with the team and Max's takeaways. He mentioned his 10 thoughts that he just published. So lots to talk about, especially with Dylan Larkin as well and what he might do this season. But first, a word from our sponsors of the Winged Wheel podcast. Back after this. You ever see yourself in the mirror after a long week and think, man, I've lost a bit off the top, not just in the standings? Yeah, hair loss hits harder than a blue line stand-up sometimes, but the good news is it's something you can actually do something about. That's where Hims comes in. Hims provides access to licensed medical providers who can help you find what works for your hair loss, all online, no awkward face-to-face visits in some waiting room where you're pretending to read old magazines. They've got access to clinically proven ingredients where, if prescribed, they can help stop further hair loss and even regrow hair in as little as 3 to 6 months. And the whole thing's straightforward. No hidden fees, no surprises, just personalized care that fits your schedule. So if you're ready to get back in the game and start feeling like yourself again, let Hims help you out. For simple online access to personalized and affordable care for hair loss, ED, weight loss, and more, visit hims.com/wingedwheel. That's hims.com/wingedwheel for your free online visit. hims.com/wingedwheel. Individual results may vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil and finasteride. Featured products include compounded drug products, which the FDA does not approve or verify for safety, effectiveness, or quality. Prescription required. See website for full details, restrictions, and important safety information. Welcome back. Max, you just published a piece on The Athletic about your 10 thoughts about the Red Wings season so far, and you actually have an upcoming piece that you just mentioned to us about Emmitt Finnie. And, a lot of focus on the Red Wings is about Dylan Larkin and his hot start. So why don't we start with Larkin? But there's a lot for you to catch up on because it's been almost a couple of months here since the listeners have heard you.
Yeah, all that's happened for Dylan Larkin since the last time we talked is he's off to maybe his best start to a season as a Red Wing. And I think what's most interesting about it is that there's really nothing about it that's like, oh, I don't recognize this. It's all the stuff we're used to seeing. It's just every night, right? And it's every night at a really high level. I mean, there's a couple of the set plays that they've used over again, Sherratt and Edvinsson setting up those slot one-timers. That's something that I think is a really valuable thing is for them to kind of have those non-power play manufactured touches like that. And him being such a good face-off guy enables it because you have a pretty good idea that he's going to win that draw and create that chance. But it's everything. And I think he's setting up plays. He's throwing pucks to the net in a way that just create more opportunity. I think about that goal in the Oiler game where he throws it on net from the half wall. Like, that's not exactly like a high percentage play. And yet, compared to what it is if you slow that down, try to really take your time and get cute with it, you might just cost yourself that opportunity. And so sometimes good things happen when you just let it rip. And I thought that was the best game I've ever seen him play, to be honest, that Oilers game, the way he shut down Connor McDavid, and then the offense just kind of finds you. That's a hockey principle that I can get behind, and he exemplified it. So I think he's playing outstanding hockey. He's really carrying the load. And to your point about Finnie, like there's an overlap there, right? Like these things work together. We saw Larkin and Raymond be really good last year with Marco Kasper on their line. Guys, Emmitt Finnie to me looks a lot like mini Marco Kasper, and I use mini as pretty much to just mean he's a year younger because he's every bit as big. He's really fast, and yeah, he doesn't have quite the same level of like skill that I think Kasper does, but he's really smart just like Kasper. He's really competitive just like Kasper, and he's having the same kind of impact that Kasper did there. I think it's really interesting that we must have did 4 or 5 episodes this summer over and over, banging our heads against the wall going, who are they going to play next to these guys? And here comes this guy who is he's very similar to what Marco Kasper was with those two. And I think that's a big reason why it's happened. He digs pucks out. He can finish his own plays. There's just a lot to like about the way Detroit's top line looks. And again, that's with Raymond looking not quite himself yet.
That last point is, I think, what is standing out to me the most. And it really just lends back to what you just said, Max. So Finnie and Larkin both deserve all the credit in the world because it's their doing. And Larkin, let's talk about his start first. Like, I would have said it's crazy to think Larkin could be a 100-point player for someone who, asked that question preseason in, let's say, an overtime thread. I also would have said it would be a pretty long shot for Axel Sandin-Pellikka to make the team at the same time as MBN and Finnie, who is on the top line with Larkin. So apparently all we're doing right now in Hockeytown is crazy. But based on how Larkin's playing, yeah, like you're right. It's not like every single shot is just being deflected in and this is just a run hot and it's not sustainable. We are just seeing Dylan Larkin more so. I do have the same kind of questions about how is this going to age throughout the season, and especially with the Olympics where he's going to be, I still think, more of a force for Team USA than people give him credit for based on what we saw from Four Nations. But this is Dylan Larkin who's found a new piece of chemistry here, and that's still without Lucas Raymond at 100%, who we know that's probably his best connection on the team in terms of chemistry and production. I mean, Raymond's still racking up points with like secondary assists and some decent plays here and there while injured, so it's not like he's been devoid of any contributions, but still, like Larkin has somehow taken another step. And so through 10 games, sure, you can say that's a small sample size and can go away and you could peter out and finish between 70 and 80 points by the end of the year. But you have to be really encouraged by what you've seen so far that Larkin has seized this kind of opportunity of having another line mate that has brought out the best in what he needs on the ice, and he's capitalized, and the Red Wings are even better for it on their top line, when before we wouldn't have looked for the top line for anything other than what they've been giving the team.
When someone starts to surpass, or a player or a team starts to surpass my expectations of them, one of the ways that I try to kind of balance it is I go, all right, what if the rest of the way is exactly what I thought the whole way was going to be, right? So if coming into this year, I told you Dylan Larkin was going to be a 75, 30 to 35 goal, 75-ish point center, which is what I would have told you. What does that add up to the rest of the way? Well, if he's that player with the start that he's had, you're talking about a guy who's going to finish with like 82 to 85 points here. And that seems very possible to me. But that's just being a point a game or slightly below player for the rest of the way, which I think is what all of us would have guessed for Dylan Larkin. So that's how I try to balance it out. I don't think that every good swing has to be balanced by an equally bad swing and it all adds up. Like if you outperform for a stretch, I think you'll go to your baseline eventually and then you get the product of that. And that applies to the team too, right? Like we're looking at 10 games in and they've got 14 points. So they're at 1.4 points per game. Well, that's a great, percentage, but if you just balance it to what you thought they were coming in, it only bumps the total by a couple points. But as that goes on, if they continue to play at ahead of their pace, the math gets friendly. And that's how I kind of try to calculate expectations. And the math right now for Dylan Larkin, to your point, Ryan, looks really, really good.
He's only 3 points off first in the NHL. He's tied for fourth in league scoring. So I think we need to adjust our projections as to where he's going to finish in the Art Ross race. And frankly, I think he's going to win it the way he's going.
And I think to your point as well, Max, we talk about the Red Wings points percentage and, getting points now. A lot of the Red Wings wins were against Atlantic Division teams. Like those are 4-point games. So, the Red Wings have 14 points in 10 games. That's fantastic. Better than I think anyone would have projected at this point, but they've beat the right teams as well. So, those are the types of wins over teams in your division that are going to pay massive dividends as the playoff race starts to come around. Teams really start to tighten up around that playoff cutoff point.
He made a comment after I think it was after the Oilers game, where he was talking about Finnie, and he made a comment that was like, I see him be fearless out there, and I go like, I can be fearless too. And you think about that in the other direction most of the time, where the young guy's looking to the older guy and wanting to be like him. I thought that was an interesting framing by Larkin of like, you get this almost like youthful, it's not recklessness, but it's this like youthful invincibility kind of thing. And if you can tap into that as an older player and get that feeling back, I mean, we all remember what that felt like to be 20 years old and just think like, I'm going to do this. Yeah, like, why wouldn't I do this, right? And it's almost like you don't know any better of how hard it really is. And I wonder if we're seeing, I think that was really insightful from Dylan. I think that really captures a little bit of what we're seeing in his game, even though it's the same Dylan we've always kind of seen. It just, like you said, Ryan, it's like Dylan Larkin, but more.
I mean, that line alone should earn Emmitt Finnie some more first place Calder votes, I think. One thing that I've harped on a lot over the years is that I don't really love putting ceilings on what we've seen from, 25 to 29-year-old players on the Red Wings who are good, but they've been on the team the entire time the team has been bad. And Dylan Larkin was the poster boy for that. Like, is he around a point per game player at best most years for the past while? Absolutely. But at the same time, he's not had a good team for a complete season. It's only been the last few years where he's had a good team for any stretch at all. And so, I mean, I'm hopeful. I'm not going to guarantee it because, again, it's just 10 games. But I'm hopeful that this Emmitt Finnie coming in and giving the team a spark, and Axel Sandin-Pellikka coming in and giving the team a spark on the blue line, and for a brief period, MBN as well, that is the beginnings of this team kind of elevating. And like Larkin having actual tangible takeaways from these players and how they play and finding a new way to mix into his line, but also just the rising tide lifting all boats. So the sky's the limit for Larkin. I think it's really cool to see more of the league appreciate him. I think we've really been seeing a focus from national media on the Red Wings even more so than ever this season. And it's nice to see Larkin at that forefront. I think hopefully he'll get some more appreciation come Olympics, but it's about as good of a start that you could have hoped for, and honestly one that wasn't expected. And speaking of which, just to lean more into Finnie, like this guy, the more he plays, the more I'm like, I would have a hard time seeing this falling away. There's absolutely nothing wrong with MBN and his path and sending him down. Like that is so exceedingly normal and expected for even a first-round pick, a higher first-round pick. And Emmitt Finnie is just breaking all the molds. He's playing the game the right way. He's doing things out there that players take years to kind of pick up on and do automatically. And it's indicative of how he's kind of developed over time. And I know, Max, you're about to put a piece out on the Athletic Detroit about how he developed as a player over time. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, really, it's just trying to answer the question of like, how did this kid go from where he was, right? Everyone knows by now, 0 goals his first year in junior, a 7th round draft pick. How do you go from that to where he is now? It almost never happens this fast for 7th round picks. We don't see very many 7th round picks become full-time NHLers. And again, Finnie's at, 10 games right now, so I'm not saying he's already there, but it looks pretty clear to your point, Ryan, and we just don't see it this fast. There's a stat in there. He's the 11th youngest player in NHL history picked in the 7th round or later to hit the 5-point threshold. Think about that. That is staggering to hear in how long the NHL has existed. The Red Wings are in their 100th season, as you all are well aware, right? And that's across the league. So this doesn't happen, and I think the way that he did it, you really can't divorce from his path. Like it's not like, oh, he's doing this even though he was a 7th round pick. McLellan had a great line about it after that Oilers game. It was like, because he had to do all these little things, I trust him. And that's why he's here. Because and honestly, like, Finnie's on pace right now for like 64 points. I don't think that's where he's going to end up, right? But I don't think anyone in that locker room on that bench is going to care if this guy finishes with 35 points or 40 points, because everything he does impacts winning, right? Like whether it's his defensive stick and he's going to get stick on puck and he's going to back check as hard as he can. It's forecheck, freeing up Larkin to sit a little high on the slot and look for a pass there, even though they kind of connected on the other side of that a couple games ago. But like Finnie can go be the first guy down there. Finnie can win a board battle. And when he does, he has the hockey sense. This is the biggest differentiator, I think, is like, I don't know what you guys thought, but whenever I had watched him, I was like, okay, I'm thinking of the boxes that are checked, right? 6'1", like projectable size, check. Skating, double check, like excellent skater. Competitiveness and like, grit. Okay, yeah, fearlessness, check. To me, I'm thinking energy guy. And so when I earlier this summer did my like future lineup projection, I penciled Emmitt Finnie in as the 4C. And I felt like I was being even a little bold, like, this 7th round pick, I think he's going to be the regular 4C in 2 or 3 years. Turns out I was way off. And the reason that I was off is because his hockey sense is way better than I ever gave credit for. And I don't know if that's am I overrating it a little bit now because of what we've seen? I don't know. But when I've made these calls, it gets mentioned by people. Like this is a smart player. And so, he's on power play 1 right now. That's not going to keep up forever when Patrick Kane gets back. But he's going to keep making winning plays because he's smart, he has the physical tools, and he has the mental aptitude for it. And all those things are pretty much things he had to work for and work through to find ice time. And so I really enjoyed reporting this story because I just think it resonates. Like anything that you want to do, you may or may not have the opportunity for right away. But if you just kind of commit to being where you are and being the best at what you're being asked to do, you will own those things. And there's some more good stuff about kind of how they found him that I hope people will enjoy. But this kid has been obviously it's a positive story for the Red Wings. They needed him this year. They needed a player like this in the big picture of their rebuild. We've talked how many times about how it can't just be the 1st round picks. It's also just pretty inspirational in general, right? Like this is something, is a story that I think everyone can relate to and draw something from.
When we think about how we've wanted the Red Wings to play for the past 5-6 years and outside of lacking the talent, but just the mentality and what you want to see them do on the ice, it's like he's packaged up and a delivery from the hockey gods to say, hey, here's your energy guy who's also productive of old from the Red Wings' dominant decades, and here's the newest version that you haven't seen in a long time, which is really cool. And a similar player is Marco Kasper, who's not off to the same start as Emmitt Finnie, but still such an important cog for the Red Wings if they're going to continue to be successful. So what do you see from Marco Kasper so far with just 1 goal to start the year?
It's weird because it's just we talked about with Larkin how it's like Larkin but a little more. With Kasper it's almost the inverse. Like there's nothing that I'm saying like, oh, he's doing this way different than he has in the past. You're just not noticing him quite as much. Maybe it's a half step of whether it's hesitance or whatever else. Is he looking for the play to kind of come to him instead of just going and disrupting, right? Now, I thought, again, we're recording this on Wednesday afternoon. I thought in Tuesday night's game that was the most like Marco Kasper he's looked this year. So encouraging signs, maybe that's going to kind of come around. I agree that they're similar players. And one thing I've been thinking of, to take a little bit of a tangent, is like, is this a little bit of a vindication in the way that the Red Wings have drafted, which at times has caught a little bit of heat for targeting this style of player, right? I mean, it's the compete guys, it's the, hardest worker guys, projectable guys, perceived as kind of more floor than ceiling. And maybe there's still truth to that. But again, like, what's the reason why you value a player like that? Is because they can play anywhere in your lineup and they can be the missing piece for your two best players when they don't have an answer on the left wing. Like, you just draw in and you find one of these guys because they have those traits. So Kasper did that a year ago. Finnie's doing it now. I think that is a little bit of a vindication for the Red Wings draft strategy. And obviously you want to see Kasper get back to being that, but I really don't have any doubts that he will, whether it takes 5 games, 10 games, 20 games. I just don't think those traits wane. It's something that will come back. I just really feel that way.
There have been Red Wings who have been bad and like not playing like themselves. And I think when they've had their worst games so far, sure, Kasper's been part of that and he's made some mistakes over the course of the season. But at the same time, yeah, I tend to agree. It just feels like maybe this is a manifestation of some kind of like light sophomore slump, like added pressure, harder minutes, more of a less of a looseness, so to speak, of how you come into games, and you're a bigger piece of the pie and other teams are zeroing in on you. They know you're a physical kind of ricochet off the opponent's kind of player, so they're going to have tape on you and they're going to have a plan for you kind of thing. If you're the 2C, they're going to have a plan for how to play you, right? So that could all be part of it, and that's the kind of thing where you're not seeing any warning signs. So yeah, I tend to agree that it's not anything to sound the alarms for, but sure, something that has to kind of change in terms of productivity if the Red Wings are going to continue to succeed and get away from the inconsistencies that we've seen through 10 games so far. And, we talked about it in the first segment of the show, but Alex DeBrincat, and you mentioned, Max, that he's been doing the right things and he's been performing extremely well. And it took up until game 9 to get his first goal. But do you see this as a potential exceptional season from him where he's going to make an Olympic push? And what do you think the heights are for DeBrincat?
Well, let me pose this to you guys. Brad, if I just showed you, if I didn't show you like where the puck ended up, and I just showed you all of DeBrincat's chances this season, how many goals do you think you would have?
7, 8, 9 at least.
I mean, you get those crossbars in the first period of the Blues game. Like the David Riddick stick save, like I called it miraculous in the thing. I don't even think it was a good save. It's just like, how is your stick there? Like, it's not like he was like flinging it across. He just kind of limply poked it out and the puck stays out. And if you're DeBrincat, you're just like, what do I have to do? He's been so good. And the fact that he only has 2 goals was is kind of still mind-boggling. He's been everywhere. And so he had 39 goals a year ago. Again, we talk about adjusting projections. Like, I would have to at this point project him a little lower than that, but I still think that he is going to be a 30-plus goal guy. And I think if he's giving you all the off-puck stuff that he's giving you, the way that he, forechecks, and I think he's been a high-tempo player, I think you're more than happy to live with that from Alex DeBrincat, because I think you continue to notice him almost as much as anyone on the ice, which is striking because his line has been so, whether it's Kasper's kind of being off, Kane being out, like his line has been the most kind of thrown off of any of Detroit's lines so far. So the fact that we're talking about DeBrincat in this vein is really impressive, I think.
So those are obviously the big names, but of, the new guys, who else has kind of caught your eye and anything notable where you've seen a shift in the way the Red Wings play because of them?
Yeah, I think maybe a little early on it was obvious, but Mason Appleton, he comes up and he kind of, McLellan called it pinch hitting in that top 6, and I thought it went really well. Even since he's gone away from that, obviously you're not having the offensive moments that he was at the beginning of the year, but I still feel like the more I watch him, the more I really get why this was a piece the Red Wings wouldn't add. He might have been the player that they added this summer that got the least fanfare of all of them, right? Like Van Riemsdyk has the name. Gibson was obviously like, oh, this big name goalie and I think Gibson's been solid, even if unspectacular. Bernard Docker, you were kind of talking about the upside. Outside of Hamonic, like Mason Appleton got kind of the least celebration when they signed him, and yet you watch the tempo, look at where their penalty kill is at. Like that's been a massive difference year over year, and Mason Appleton's a key member of it. So he's definitely a guy that's making a real impact on this team, and probably a guy I didn't give enough credit to when they signed.
Oh yeah, when they brought Appleton in, like he was maligned, and even we were discussing like, okay, it's fine. I think in terms of bringing in a checking forward or someone who's going to help the PK, absolutely, you got to do some things different because it's not been working for the Red Wings. And the money's whatever. Like, with the cap going up, and it's gone up even astronomically since we had those discussions, it is what it is. But, we saw the crowding of the bottom six of the Red Wings, and we saw, do you want to give Soderblom and Berggren a chance to earn a spot? Do you want to give spots to Danielson and Mazur and MBN and, Bear and everyone else in the future? I don't even think those were unfair notions to raise, but it's that, yeah, Appleton has been so much better than what everyone has expected. And he came in and he was not at all part of the conversation of the crowding in the bottom six, because he's an automatic guy where you're like, no, you're a good contributor in Detroit's depth. And when they put you on the first line, and you're not at all in the same vein of the Rasmussens and the Confers and the Soderbloms and whoever else people are debating should be in or out of the lineup. So pleasantly surprised, and I'll say, happy to be wrong on how much of an impact Appleton's been able to have. And you mentioned the PK and the special teams. Like, God, that turnaround has been so clutch for the Red Wings, where their PK has just been so rock solid this season.
Yeah, and Prashant had a great piece today that I think everyone should go check out. Like, he had a stat, I'm going to get the number wrong, but it's something like 36% of the shots that opponents are taking on their power plays against the Red Wings are getting through to the net. Like, the Red Wings are blocking like crazy, or they're forcing guys to take off-angle shots where the shots are going wide. I mean, that's the best thing you could ask. I mean, obviously, other than like winning every faceoff and getting every clear and denying every entry, like once a team is set up, the best thing you can hope to do is get a block or make them miss the net, because that's how you get a loose puck and get those clears. So that stat probably, frankly, explains the entirety of the Red Wings penalty kill improvement. So, I'm sure there's some schematic reasons that it's happening. They're obviously being very aggressive, but that's a game changer for them to have a penalty kill that is coming up this big.
And Brad mentioned earlier, like, the goalies haven't been outstanding, but they haven't been bad. And they haven't really had to be that great outside of Talbot, stealing 2 points, grand larceny from Toronto. And I mean, that's a big part of it. We always say it's hard to be a Red Wings goalie behind this defense. And, fans and the team have been looking for an answer in net where it's like, how do you overcome that? And that was never going to be the answer solely. Like, there had to be some meeting in the middle. And good teams make their goalies' lives easier. And that's what McLellan has been doing with the Red Wings. And it's really interesting to see. We'll link the article, the stats Prashant pulled of, like, they are, I don't want to say selling out in terms of, just blocking everything, but by the numbers, kinda. Like, they're not letting their goalies get shelled. And so when it comes to making key saves in big moments, as Gibson has done a few times, great. And it was still only a 20-shot game for St. Louis last game. So the turnaround in the special teams, we said, would be one of the biggest things that the season's performance would hinge on. And man, you imagine they had that last year or the year before. It's like, that's a playoff team just by the numbers.
Yeah, you could subtract enough goals from that. And, obviously part of it's keeping the power play at its level of effectiveness. There's been a little bit of a trade-off to that so far, but not extreme. I mean, where the penalty kill started from was one of the 5 worst penalty kills in NHL history. So for it to be like, I think it's a top 10 unit right now, that's massive.
All right. Those are our Red Wings notes with Max, the Go in the Room segment. Some other things. Nate Danielson has continued to roll on, as Evan mentioned earlier, a goal in the shootout winner last night as Grand Rapids continues on their franchise best start in the AHL. Unfortunate news, Carter Mazur being evaluated for a lower body injury that he sustained in practice. And you look at the Red Wings, Patrick Kane is still out. There's no guarantee that he's going to come back on this road trip, though they're hopeful for it. And MBN needs time down the AHL. Danielson, you don't know how long he's going to need to shake off the rust, although he looks very much an NHLer right now. This just seemed like Mazur's moment with how hot he started the year. Like, that's a bummer. We're still waiting for concrete updates on how long it's going to be, but that was an unfortunate update from the Griffins.
You just hate to see any injuries. You feel like this guy's had paid his injury dues 10 times over, right? He's missed so much time at such an important parts of his career at heartbreaking times too. I mean, you have starts of seasons, at his NHL call-up in his debut, and now like when he's off to a great start and honestly, he looked like he was going to be a really quick call-up this year with how he started. So again, we'll see how serious it is and what the next update is, but I think everyone is just devastated for this guy. I mean, nobody wants to see Carter Mazur miss any more time, and it's, if he, he's obviously was out for the game last night, and we'll see where the update is, but really feel for him, whatever it is.
No, I think the hope here for Carter Mazur is that, what was the movie from the 70s or 80s, The $6 Million Man? That if he gets all the injuries out of the way now, they just rebuild him as a cyborg and he will be unstoppable in the future because it's all out of the way now and they rebuild him bigger, faster, stronger. That's how that works, right?
Yeah, and look, we don't know what the injury is at this point. Like, I think it's just what it speaks to more than anything, Ryan, is like everyone is feeling this, and everyone is like, in the Red Wings world, it's like, not again, and so maybe it'll be short, and I think that's obviously the hope. But regardless, it's tough to see.
He did put on, and not to kind of pile on here, but he did put on a lot of weight and a lot of muscle very fast, and I can say when you're more of a slight frame and then you put on weight, like it does change the way your body moves and things. And so I wouldn't be surprised if this is like, a temporary phase and it's rich to say because he's been injured prior. You're definitely focusing on it and it's no doubt a concern, but your body does take time to adjust to that kind of thing too. So that's the optimistic view. So remains to be seen. Fingers crossed that it's nothing too long for Carter Mazur. All right, let's jump into the rest of the NHL, and a couple of key contracts were announced between last episode and this one, and notable, names across the league. Logan Cooley, as Max alluded to, 8-year, $10 million per year extension with Utah, who's off to an incredible start. And then Thomas Harley with the Dallas Stars with a 8-year, just under $10.6 million per year cap hit coming in. And that was a big number, but, Thomas Harley, great defenseman, 24 years old, left shot. And there's two things that come to mind if you're a Red Wings fan to look at this from a red-colored lenses is, one, does this inform at all on a Simon Edvinsson extension, or are they two different of players in terms of impact? And two, does this squeeze out Robertson as a potential way to try to add in future star talent? Now the cap is going up, but Dallas does have to make some decisions here.
Well, Dallas seems like that team that's going to be constantly pushing this upper limit because they got ahead of it when they got Rantanen. They're getting ahead of it now with Harley. I still think the salary cap's going up so much that if there's a desire to keep Robertson, they're going to be able to do it. Again, the cap's not real. Teams find ways around this all the time. I think the more relevant conversation with this in Detroit is the Edvinsson angle. Because I don't think Simon Edvinsson is Thomas Harley. Thomas Harley was a key piece of the Canadian team that won the Four Nations. He might be on the Olympic team. Like, he's more well-established than Edvinsson. But when we were talking about the Hudson and the Hughes and the Lacombe contracts as kind of maybe being the comparable, Harley kind of put the upper ceiling on it now. So if everything goes really well for Edvinsson this year, this is kind of the upper ceiling comparable now, like the absolute best case scenario for Simon. Because I know we were joking around like with how the cap's going. Would you pay him 11? Would you pay him 12? Would you pay him 13? Where's the limit of you're still getting good value for that caliber player in the new salary cap world? Now I think we have a good idea of what the top of that could look like.
The reality is people get paid on points, and it even for defensemen who that's not how you should measure them. It's kind of how you get paid, and Harley produces more points than Simon Edvinsson. So I don't think this is like necessarily a real worry that he's going to be in that territory anyway. I would agree that it's like a ceiling, if anything. But I still kind of look at some of those contracts right in the $9 million range and say, like, for a guy who plays the kind of minutes Edvinsson does, that's probably more the question is like somewhere between Sider's 8.5 to 9 is probably the answer here.
Yeah, as more data points sort of come out with contracts getting signed, it's going to become more difficult, I think, for player and team to come up with a number, because I think there's arguments on both sides for various numbers, right? Like, should he get paid more than Seider because the salary cap's going up? Is he equivalent to Thomas Harley? Like, both sides are going to use data and other contracts to get their number across. So I think it's getting more difficult, to be honest, for Simon Edmundson and the Detroit Red Wings to come up with a number that makes sense for both parties.
And we're thinking about Edmundson and Casper right now, and Brad made a good point of, when DeBrincat's eligibility comes up for extension too. Like, I'm curious to see how these are handled. We're seeing across the league, there are guys who are willing to do it, but I almost, and this is just anecdotal thinking, it's almost like when they are so guaranteed to get paid so much that they don't bother with waiting longer, because it's like the number could actually be an obstruction in terms of the team's success because it takes up too much of the cap. If you're on either end of the spectrum, you're more likely to sign earlier. But those guys who are, still really good, but maybe not the absolute best and earning, $11, $12 million, I feel like they're more likely, them and their agents, to push this further down closer to their free agency period, because the cap is still going up so much. And, barring some kind of global disaster again, I don't really see that doing anything other than accelerating. All right. Food for thought. With that, let's take another quick break. And when we're back, the final segment on this episode of the Wing Wheel Podcast. Back after this. Celebrate a century of Red Wings hockey at Hockeytown Centennial Fan Fest, November 6th to 9th at Motor City Casino Hotel. Experience the ultimate Red Wings celebration, packed with activities for fans of all ages. Meet and mingle with over 50 Red Wings legends and Hall of Famers, including Sergei Fedorov, Scotty Bowman, Nick Lidstrom, Steve Eisman, Chris Chelios, and so many more. Exclusive merchandise, interactive experiences, skills challenges, autograph sessions, and more. You won't want to miss this once-in-a-lifetime event. Tickets are going fast. Get yours now at DetroitRedWings.com/fanfest now.
We're going to overtime.
Overtime is brought to you by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. If you want to support the show and join the Dub Club, get access to benefits like our bonus overtime episodes, which record right after these main ones. We let loose, we have fun. You get Thoughts with Evan. When Max is on for Good in the Room episodes, Max gives you an unfiltered stream of expletives that would get us canceled if it ever made it to air, but it's a really great time. You'll also get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord, and you're automatically entered into all of our giveaways. We give away 2 tickets to every Detroit Red Wings home game, going directly to our Patreon supporters, and we also tell you exactly where to look to see where Max is up in the press box, and we give you a blow dart as well. So again, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. Max, thanks for volunteering for those Patreon bonus.
Yeah, it's all good, but you told me you weren't publishing the expletives.
But, I mean, every man has his price. And now that there are 3 Winged Wheel Podcast children between us 3 hosts, that price is getting lower and lower, brother.
That's true.
All right, questions from our patrons. Zach Freeland says, should we be paying more attention to Michael Postava down in Grand Rapids? Only 3 games played, but currently at a .934 save percentage in Grand Rapids' 6-0 start. It's a good point. He's been exceptional down there.
I think sort of. Like, I don't know that I view Postava as someone who, like, when you're projecting future Red Wings teams, is someone that you need to be really keyed in on. But hey, goalie is the position where, look, we just spent a bunch of time earlier in this episode talking about a guy we didn't see coming. Dilly's not to this level, and Emmitt Finnie. Goalie is the position where you most accept that, like, yeah, anything can happen. So it's early for me. And Grand Rapids, to your point, has been just outstanding as a whole. So that's also part of this. But you see some nice, I haven't watched a full Grand Rapids game yet this year. I just have seen some of the clips coming across my timeline. Certainly some big Postava saves in there. So he's not yet on my, like, kind of Red Wings radar or anything like that, but you'll take a good start from wherever you can get it.
Third Man In says, hey, Brad, this one's for you. I need your help. My buddy and I and fellow minor hockey coach Clint wasn't bullied enough as a kid, and he tapes his stick toe to heel because he thinks taping it the right way puts the wrong spin on the puck. So dumb. Brad, myth busted, or is he onto something?
It's a myth. If you are, how do I phrase this? taping your stick so loosely that the actual ridges of the tape are creating influence on the puck, I'm confused, because there's also the old school myth of if you go heel to toe, collects no snow, because when you're skating up the ice, now the blade is traveling so the snow doesn't build up between the ridges as you're going, which again, if you're taping it that loosely, makes no sense. I personally put so much wax on my blade, doesn't matter what way you go. I like going heel to toe because it's a lot simpler to just tape it that way, and I've been doing it forever and it's been fine, and like to think I got a decent shot for some of my size, so it's been working for me. But yeah, unless your taping technique is exceptionally poor, I don't think it matters all that much.
And for what it's worth, Evan started laughing when I read that out, so you can tell your buddy.
That's an absurd question. It's like when you ask me about your golf swing and things. Am I thinking about these absurd things that impact? I'm like, brother, if that's what you're thinking about, you've missed the plot.
The one I always laughed at is focus on a certain dimple. Like, how am I meant to do that with my eyes closed? You tell me that.
I got googly eyes. How can I focus on one dimple? I see twice as many as everybody else.
Gretzky had it, lost it, says, I know this has been brought up before, but the Red Wings need to have a ring of honor, as it could highlight players who have made lifetime contributions to the organization on and off the ice. My first three inductees would be Mickey, Vladdy, and Ozzy. Where do you guys stand on this idea, and who would you have in there first? I can't emphasize enough how much I love this, because I think when you are as storied of a franchise as the Detroit Red Wings, you need to have other ways to recognize great players who still haven't ascended to the retired number status, which is probably like the most elite individual distinction you can get, even surpassing Hall of Fame distinction in the NHL. But you don't want to not honor those guys, right? So I personally love it. I don't think you should only have a ring of honor. Like, I think the way the Leafs did it forever is so stupid. But having a mix of both, I think, is a great call.
And I think you got the right names there, too. I have a couple more off the top of my head. Brendan Shanahan and Nicholas Kronwall. Shanahan, I think we talked about this when the Fedorov jersey retirement news came down. I think Shanahan would have like a fringe case for it. But Kronwall, certainly, like, you're never going to be able to capture his significance to like the franchise without something like this that's like a middle ground, because you're not probably retiring Nick Kronwall's jersey number. But yet he was not just like a good defenseman for you. He was like an era leading defenseman for you and won Stanley Cups and one of the best players on a cup team. So I like it too.
All right. Next question here is from Hunter55. Tater says, is it time to give Edvinsson some power play time? Leads the team in defense points, and it's not impossible that he ends up being Detroit's best offensive defenseman.
I feel like if we're going to tinker on the power play, that's more of a Sandin-Pellikka thing. Not that he's necessarily ready for it right now, and not that Seider's doing a poor job of it. But when you drafted ASP, power play quarterback one is probably what you envisioned. And is that going to happen this year? Maybe, maybe not. Probably not anytime soon, but that's the role you're building him to. If you genuinely feel that Edvinsson can do it better than Seider, which I could hear an argument for, but it would take a lot of convincing. It'd have to be a really good argument. Then yeah, you can go for it. If you want to throw on the tinfoil hat, you don't put him on the power play this year to Max's point, to keep the dollars down. You maximize him at penalty kill and 5-on-5 and pray to God he finishes with 35 points and like a plus 42. But Seider hasn't given any reason to not be on the power play. ASP's your power play quarterback of the future. And though I think Edvinsson could run a power play just fine, he's not one of the top two options as it stands right now.
Yeah, I came into the year expecting Edvinsson to run PP2, but that was before Sandin-Pellikka made the team. And once Sandin-Pellikka made the team, he has to be on one of the two power plays, right? So at that point, you're just debating, okay, are you moving Sandin-Pellikka up to power play one, and then not only knocking Seider, who just, by the way, was the point man for the number 4 power play in the NHL last season, not just knocking him power play 2, but knocking him off the power play. That doesn't seem reasonable or realistic. I mean, the only argument you would have is if you had like a left shot one-timer you were trying to feed, and then it's like a little more natural lane, lefty to lefty. But on power play 1, certainly you're trying to feed the righties, Raymond and DeBrincat, for those one-timers. And on power play 2, I don't think you're really like trying to design your power play to set up a Marco Kasper one-timer there, right? So like, even though you want that option, I don't really see a path to it, even though I agree with Brad. I think he's more than capable of doing it, and I expect him to see it more this year. So.
All right, interesting one here. Wings Purgatory Hockey Enjoyer says, what do you think about Mario Ferraro as a trade and sign target as a bottom 4 defenseman to take over for Ben Sherratt for the next few years? Solid, if not spectacular, relative expected goals for percentage the past couple seasons on an awful Sharks team. 2026 UFA and only 27 years old. Not off to the strongest start this year, which may lower his acquisition cost. Does a guy like that provide any benefit over waiting to see if a Buyum or a Wallinder or Anton Johansson pan out?
Not for me. You said 2026 UFA. It's the same as Sherratt. You're not replacing Sherratt with another 2026 UFA. And if you are, you're probably doing it in 2026 UFA. So like Ferraro, the player, but I don't really see a trade case.
Yeah, the Red Wings' issue at defense at this point, if they are making a move, is higher up in the lineup. They have plenty of depth on the team now. They have plenty of depth, theoretical depth in the system. It's still that top 4 left shot D that seems to be missing, and I don't think Ferraro's that guy.
And to the point of that depth, from James Pridemore says, question for Max. Mr. Bultman, what is your opinion of the likelihood of Buyum and Wallinder being NHL players in the future? Thanks for all you guys do. Student teaching is tough.
Yeah, I think they will both be NHL players to varying degrees. Like, I'm not saying one of them is going to play 800 games or anything like that. It's not impossible. They both have certain attributes that scream NHL. Like for Wallinder, it's the skating at 6'4". That's really hard to find. For Buyum, it's the sense at 6'3". That's really valuable with a little bit of offense to his game too. You could have a really good debate about which of those players you would rather have. And it's a real decision the Red Wings are going to probably have to make at some point, because you're going to run out of spots at some point. So I think I prefer Buyum for the sense, but I can completely understand why skating at that size is just so valuable. Like, it creates so many opportunities defending the rush. I just haven't quite consistently enough seen like the edge that I would want from that player in Wallinder. But physically, there's no question it'd be him. I just would kind of lean, if you're torn, you maybe lean to the hockey sense. What do you think, Brad?
Yeah, I've gravitated towards Buyum over Wallinder more. Hockey sense is just the most valuable thing in the NHL nowadays. The skating's a huge plus, but even when you force those turnovers or end up with the puck on your stick, you still got to make a positive play with it. How many defensemen have we seen in the NHL who are really good stoppers, really good in transition, like in terms of their skating, and then the puck gets on their stick and it's glassing out, like just can't do anything with it. And I'm not saying Wallinder's poor with the puck. He's not. But Buyum does bring another level to that. So I have more faith in bringing Buyum's skating up to NHL passable than I am Wallinder's hockey sense to the same level at the NHL.
All right. On that note, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, and we're going to get into recording our Patreon exclusive overtime episode. Thank you all so very much for tuning in. And if you want to hear those Patreon exclusive bonus overtime episodes, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast is how you get access to that and so much more. And if you want to help us out, but Patreon's not really your thing, that is totally okay. Wherever you're getting this podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever, if you want to subscribe, leave a rating or a review or a thumbs up or a like or whatever it might be on that platform, all of that really does help us out a ton. We thank our sponsors of the Winged Wheel Podcast. And again, wingedwheelpodcast.com/Red Wings if you want to come to Winged Wheel Podcast night at the LCA. To our name level supporters on Patreon, we could not do this show without you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Arjun Shanker, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Aikfer, Martin Norberg, THL Champ, Samuel Soderholm, Icon, Glenn Brabham, Rain Dano, below average ball hockey goalie, Sea Lion, Matthew M. Rice, Darb EQ, Bingo Bango, Hassam Al-Qassem, Asher Killian, Kaylin Wood, Alex Toger, That's What I Appreciate About You, Derek Enstam, Matt McKay, Andy Hardcore, Sam Bankson, Citizen High Five, RA, Aaron Hudson, Admiral Matt S. at the Cheesebag Navy, The El Cato, Stephen Ortlieb, Jonathan Miller, Give Blood Fight Probert, DJ Denton, Carl Brutinda Nanowski, Jay Gollum, John Ingalls, CB55, Connor Scovey, Adam Zuiza, Adam Rose, I Miss Pew Suter, Steve R, Hockeytown Matt, Mr. Kuzi, Chaotic Monkey, Craig Kibble, Eiserplan Stan, Clip Clop, Nene, Haji713, Now I Have to Learn How to Click on a Macintosh, Griffin Not From Grand Rapids, Marty, Kazi the OG13, Jeff Pridemore, Eric Hill, Butts Carlton, Best James Bond, Beer League Legend, Alec, Mark Hernandez, Some Smitty Cards, Grand Rapids Girly, Anna Sleeman, William, Kip Tira Jr., Mike Asher, Chris Black, August, Brian Munn, General Andy Bohanna, the Cheesebag Army, Quaz, Lonnie Zone, Dylan Larkin Trade Sacrifice, Showing Your Mom My Full-Size Snickers. Thank you for that. Matt Keeler, Linda Hull, Dick Trickle, famous NASCAR driver, as I learned, Connor Leighton, As Good As It Gets, Jeremiah Dobo, Josh Yelton, Brad Simmons, Darren Fick, Bex, The Hodag, Baseball, Basketball, Wiener Dog, Short Sports, Commander Ben Baron, The Cheeseback Space Force, Sandin-Pellikka's Pet Pelican, Griffey Boy, JM Rhapsody, Frank Stanley, Rosie Posey, Ophelia, That Other Guy, Pucking, Puck, Carl, Thames, The Hat 123, Stephen, A.A. Ron, Corey Prida, All Motor No Hands, Gene Sullivan, Roy Mudbutt, Big Cheese, James Pridemore, Upernadian, Drop the Puck, Eric Nance, Ann Stanislavski, Jim, Bellingham Acid Balls, Wings Fan in St. Louis Scott, Johnny Page, Lucas Raitmond, Cops, Bubba, Gump Lip, Trent Thorough, Grepsky, Evan Beckner, Return of Jambo, C.E. Hayes, Finnie to the Rafters, Jacob Marsh, Falkness, 91 in the Rafters, and I'm Still Stranded in Arkansas, Fight Night at the Joe, Andrew Shaw, Axel's Sandy-Pellikka, and your second favorite patron. Thank you all so very much. We'll talk to you Sunday.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to visit wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you'll find links to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find ways to support the show, like Patreon, official podcast merchandise, and more. And don't forget to follow us on X at Winged Wheel Pod, at Ryan Hanna, WWP, at Brad Crisco, and at Hockeytown Evan, as well as Winged Wheel Podcast on Instagram.
This message is brought to you by Greenlight Lending. Are you facing financial red lights on your home ownership journey? Don't have money for a down payment or closing costs? Struggling with your current mortgage payment or other debt obligations? Or maybe you have a complicated situation like credit challenges or self-employment income? At Greenlight Lending, they turn those red lights green with creative mortgage solutions for purchase and refinance loans. Their team crafts personalized plans with flexible closing cost options, competitive brokered rates, and innovative loan programs tailored to your needs. Whether it's finding the right loan or guiding you through the process, they're here to help you score your home ownership goals. Let's get you out of the penalty box and into the game. Head to gogreenlightlending.com to explore solutions or call Nick directly at 586-321-1888 for your customized plan. All loans are subject to credit approval, terms, and conditions. Rates and programs vary. Contact for details. Greenlight Lending, lighting the way to your financial future. NMLS 2676683, an equal housing opportunity lender, proud sponsor of the Winged Wheel Podcast.